I am a young single woman who recently bought a townhouse in a new city. A friend of mine, who is a male, is starting a new job in the same city in a few months. We agreed to become roommates and he will pay me rent. We are just friends and not even close ones at that. I have zero romantic intentions with him and view this as a business relationship. Is this a deal breaker for anyone? Will this hurt my chances in dating? Update. Thanks to everyone who responded. Going forward, I have decided to proceed with renting an extra room out to this guy with a month-to-month rental agreement. For those that were looking for context, he will have his own private room and bathroom, and I do not know of anyone else in this city who needs a room. I need the income as I am in college online and working full-time. Thanks, everybody. Story 1. Sounds like a log line for a sitcom in the 90s. And obviously some people will have a problem with that and some won't. We're not a hive mind. Subtle nuances in relationships. Blah, blah, blah. Story 2. This situation always reminds me of this conversation from the Seinfeld episode, The Label Maker. George and Jerry are at the coffee shop. Jerry, male roommate. Huh? George, yes, a male roommate. Jerry, is this a problem? George, it's a huge problem, Jerry. The hardest part about having sex with a woman is getting her to come back to your place. He's already got that. Jerry, well, maybe he's... George, no. Believe me, he's not. Jerry, so he's an eligible receiver. George, she's confiding in him about our dates. You always like the person you talk to about the date more than the date. It's just a matter of time till they realize, hey, we could have sex. Jerry, what's stopping them? George, exactly. You know how they get animals to reproduce in captivity? They just put them in the same cage. Jerry, what does he look like? George, oh, that's the worst part of it. He looks just like me. Jerry, he looks like you and he's working from the inside? George, I look like me and I'm working from the outside. Who do you think is in the better position? Jerry, not you. Story 3. I dated a girl in college I met in class one time. We drank and then she told me she had a boyfriend. Weird, so we stopped talking. She randomly texted me and said, we should live together next year. Being that she was incredibly attractive and now single, I agreed. It was the craziest yet fun experience of my life so far. And yes, it hurt my dating chances because we would have convenient casual sex. Story 4. Will this hurt my chances in dating? If you mean will it reduce your potential dating pool, then yes. There are people who don't want to deal with the possibility, no matter what you say. You say it's business, but all it takes is one spark, one connecting point, one drunken night, and suddenly things change. As to whether this is a large number of men, I can't really say. Story 5. My sister had a male roommate and she had no issues with dating. She had issues with her roommate, though, because there are challenges in living with people. They are much better friends now that they have stopped living together. Story 6. I'm going to get downvoted for this, but the reality is a lot of people are only as faithful as their options. Just because a straight man and woman live together doesn't mean they will have sex or cheat on their partners. However, having that temptation or option literally living in their home doesn't reduce the risk or the chance that it would happen. Without being too graphic, there is already going to be an intimacy and familiarity with your roommate that just comes with living together, being around each other, and being in states of undress that people typically reserve for being comfortable in their own home. Now imagine you are in a relationship and you and your boyfriend get into a big fight, so you go home and look who happens to be there to listen and comfort you. And would you look at that, you just happen to be wearing a tank top with no bra and short shorts. Not that there is anything wrong with that, you deserve to be comfortable in your own home. But all of a sudden, that comfort friend hug is lasting just a little bit long. I'm sure you can see how a potential boyfriend would be concerned. Story 7. I've lived with 3 guys and never even looked at them that way and vice versa. They brought women home all the time, and those women never saw me as a threat either. Partially because we have very different vibes. It started off with 2 girls and 2 guys. Then one girl was replaced by another. Then the second girl was replaced by another guy. We were all caught up in our own lives that it took me maybe 3 months to even realize that I was the only woman left. But the guys were cool, had a bunch of girlfriends, and were emotionally mature about stuff like that, and I had a ton of guy friends. You have other types of guys who only really hang with the boys and would make a big deal out of living with a woman, and likewise with women too, in their circles. They maybe would not be able to deal with it or even want it, and I would not want to live with guys who wouldn't be able to relax or handle it. I would rather move than deal with some guy who lives with me and starts flirting mindlessly. I very much liked being able to go out of the shower in a towel and these guys being decent and mature enough that they not only gave zero attention, but never stared or were creepy about it. But they were also total party boys who could easily get women whenever they wanted. They were nice and kind, but yeah, party guys who were secure in themselves within reason. My point is, vibes matter. So you need to ask yourself, can you handle a guy you date and love living with a female roommate? If you want that type of vibe with a spouse who has co-ed friends, go for it. If you can't handle it, then don't expect those guys to be cool with you doing it. Because if this is a deal breaker for someone, but you're fine with it, then it's a wonderful way of cutting off the guys who aren't cool with it. Story 8. I will never again date a woman with a male roommate. Every single time they either are former partners or friends with benefits or develop something. Nope, nope, nope. Story 9. I'm sure some people would have a problem with it. In general, I wouldn't see it as a deal breaker, but I would expect appropriate boundaries between who I was seeing and her roommate. And she would need to do enough to show she was enthusiastically into me, and I'd need to see that a bit sooner than usual to make it clear that I'm not competing with him. Story 10. I would never date a woman with a male roommate again. My ex and I started dating basically the same week that she signed a lease with another guy for the same reason you stated. It was a recurring speed bump for our entire relationship, and after we broke up, he tried unsuccessfully to make a move on her. Part of the reason these situations are bad for women is that they either refuse to accept or can't understand the reality of the male mind. Even if you sincerely aren't interested, he likely is at some level. It just demonstrates poor judgment on your part if you have one. Story 11. It's a good question, because at the zoo, they just put a male and female of any species into the same cage and they'll mate. Men instinctively know this, so they might be mildly suspicious of you having a male roommate. The answer to your question is no. If you're out on a date, mention your male roommate early, followed immediately by a comment disqualifying him as someone you'd ever sleep with, gay, weird, disfigured, don't ever hang out, etc. The answer is yes if when you mention him you twirl your hair and giggle, and if you keep bringing him up unprompted and in a favorable light. Story 12. In Germany, this is normal. I've had plenty of female roommates even when I had girlfriends, and my exes also had roommates, and it didn't bother me at all. Story 13. Bad idea. Many, if not most, men won't like it. If the roommate is very attractive, it will be especially bad. It's not about insecurity but about reality. The male mind, appearances, and so on. The vast majority of affairs happen with coworkers, mutual friends, exes, old friends, or that friend you're told not to worry about. It's far too easy to have sloppy boundaries in a situation like that, and most people will realize that. Women get attention much more easily, so that's why it's skewed, but I think most women wouldn't like dating a guy with a cute female roommate either. Imagine you start dating a guy who has an attractive roommate. She has a boyfriend, but oh, they broke up a month later. Oh, she is actually nice, but oh, last night she watched some movies with him on the couch while you were working late. What's the big deal? Just a movie, right? Oh yeah, he was understanding about her missing the rent, so she cooked him a meal. He is raving about how awesome it tasted, and he was hugging her to console her because she was crying so hard after the breakup. See? Need me to keep going? Cohabitation can get uncomfortable very fast and very easily. Half of the stories where someone got cheated on start this way. Some nonsense about control and insecurity convincing them to shrug and ignore reality. Next thing you know, it's that person your significant other was uncomfortably close to. Yeah, they crossed that invisible line by breathing, since it was so thin to begin with. If you're dating a person who tends to get into situations with naturally compromised boundaries, there is, of course, increased risk. And most people instinctively know this. Story 14. That's going to be a walk off the dealership for me. Seen and heard of this situation many times. Either the roommate themselves or someone in their friend group is at some point going to try to test the waters with the other party. Story 15. I owned a house and rented a room to a bartender at a bar I frequented. I can definitely say that having a male roommate did not affect the steady stream of friends coming over to sleep with her. She actually moved out when one of them managed to get her pregnant. Story 16. You will not like to hear this, but it probably will. I do not know you, but I know a lot of people who had opposite-sex roommates, and the majority of them ended up getting involved at some point. So, knowing that in the back of my mind, I would not want to date you. However, a lot of guys do not care at all. So, it would not doom you or anything, but it is true that a significant percentage of men would see it as a red flag. Story 17. Just make sure you get everything in writing. If he gets fired and cannot come up with the money, you need to be able to take action. Maybe head over to Reddit Legal Advice for more information. Story 18. Well, a man helps support his woman, and in a roundabout way, this roommate is doing the same thing. Not that you shouldn't have a healthy support system. People change. They lose attraction and gain attraction to other people. I dated a girl who had a guy best friend, and they were casually having sex until we met. Even when we had a break, they slept together, and she confessed she still had feelings for me. I saw a future with her and let my guard down. It messed me up for years, but I'm happily married now. I met my wife after. I wouldn't care if she had guy friends. I trust her. She deserves that. Story 19. Imagine you going over to a girl, and there is a guy living with a "hi, we are just friends" vibe. Maybe some guys just ignore it, but I'm afraid that most guys could turn back and walk away immediately. Story 20. He's not your roommate. He's your tenant. Check your mortgage to see if it prohibits that, and make sure you have all the insurances and contracts in place before he moves in. He's only your roommate if someone else owns the house and that someone else is the landlord. You're the landlord in this relationship. Plan for him being the worst tenant you can imagine and work from there. Story 21. On one hand, it doesn't have to be a red flag because not every time will a girl be sleeping with their roommates like that. On the other hand, experience has taught me that I shouldn't bother because it usually ends up being the case in my life. It's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of guys. It also won't even matter for others. Story 22. Yes, it will hurt your chances. No, it is not necessarily a deal breaker, but that totally depends on the man. Honestly, if you want to date a good man, there's a pretty good chance they will not be completely okay with it. Story 23. Get a rental agreement, though. You need a lease. You need to outline the things you don't want to happen in that lease. Set the rules up in it. If anything goes wrong, he will legally have to leave. Story 24. I've had many roommates over the years, both male and female. I never had issues and never slept with them either. I became friends with most. Some were bad, but that's not tied to gender at all. I will say the messiest roommate I ever had was a woman. Even living in a party house in my early 20s was clean by comparison to her. One woman got weird on me, but I just moved out. By weird, I mean she made a voodoo doll with my hair to get me to sleep with her. I just added mid-30s women obsessed with Twilight to my list of women not to room with. I'm not going to knock having roommates at all. I'm still friends with a bunch of them and have had them visit or me visit them later on. There are some that don't want to socialize, and that's fine too. Another hard rule as a warning is no couples, and make hard rules on significant others or family staying over. Also, get a written lease, a copy of their license, and a photo of their car and tag. If things go to absolute disaster, that information will help track them down for court. Story 25. I would be more concerned for my safety. It is a man you barely know who, in theory, could physically overpower you at any point, and you are in a home alone with him. You might have zero romantic interest in him, but you have no idea what is going on in his head. It would be different if it were a friend you know and trust, but this is someone who is barely a friend. I would avoid. Story 26. The main thing a guy will look for in this situation is whether the friend is desperately trying to become romantically involved. Guys are pretty good at spotting when your friend is trying to break free from the friend zone, even the friend who is like a little brother to you. This is regardless of your feelings about him. Does this friend meet all your dating criteria? Then you have placed yourself in a situation where a boyfriend will struggle to trust you, or a potential cheating situation. Granted, I know I personally can be respectful and never push boundaries, but I don't know you or your friends' personalities. Story 27. I rented my room to a coffee barista I constantly saw from getting work coffees every morning. Nice girl, seemed genuine. Casually spoke about my house purchase and mentioned that I might rent a room, and she asked if she could rent it. 8 years later, she's my best friend in the world, and the guy she dated and married while living in my house is also one of my best friends. 10 out of 10 would do again if I knew it was going to end up like that. Story 28. No, it would be fine for me. So, how are you doing? I'm just kidding. Good luck with your arrangement and congratulations on buying the house. I had a female roommate for years. Me being there didn't stop guys from coming around. I think you'll be fine. Just be upfront. Story 29. Probably, unless he is obviously lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. Anecdotal, but one of my exes broke up with me and immediately dated her male roommate. He didn't have a lot going for him either, as he was addicted to crack and obese. Story 30. Certainly not for me, but for some it may be. There will be some people who can't comprehend that two unrelated people of the opposite sex can live together as roommates without being romantically involved or attracted to each other. Somewhat, yes. But more importantly, will it hurt your chances in dating to any significant degree with people you'd likely actually want to be dating? Also, the roommate situation can be a more general issue involving space, time, and privacy, regardless of the gender or orientation of the roommate. It may or may not be a significant issue, but typically it's at least somewhat more of a concern than an absolute non-issue with no impact whatsoever.